There's a vault in Lower Manhattan that holds $36 trillion worth of nothing. Not gold, not cash, not even cryptocurrency, just promises. Promises that someone, somewhere, will pay someone else back, and the entire modern world runs on it. This is the story of how debt stopped being something you avoided and became the most valuable, most traded, most essential product on Earth. How it went from a simple IOU between neighbors to a $300 trillion global machine that decides which countries eat and which ones starve. And why, when you really understand how it works, the wild thing starts to look less like finance and more like a magic trick that no one knows how to end. Let's begin with a fact that sounds wrong but isn't. In 2008, the global financial system nearly collapsed. Banks failed, people lost homes, governments had to print trillions just to keep the lights on. You know the story. Here's what you might not know. The thing that caused the crisis wasn't some exotic financial weapon or reckless gamble. It was debt. Regular, boring mortgage debt. Packaged, sliced, traded, and sold so many times that no one actually knew what they owned anymore. And yet, 15 years later, there was more debt in the world than ever before. Not less, more. Global debt in 2008, about $170 trillion. Global debt today, over $300 trillion. That's nearly 4 times the size of the entire global economy. Every government, every corporation, every household on the planet could sell everything they own and produce, and it still wouldn't be enough to pay it all back. So why does everyone keep borrowing? Because debt isn't a problem anymore, it's the product. Let's rewind, way back. For most of human history, debt was simple. You borrowed grain from your neighbor, you paid it back after harvest. You owed money to the local merchant, you settled up when you could. If you couldn't pay, things got ugly. Debtor's prison, indentured servitude, public shame. Debt was personal, it was risky, it was something you avoided. Then, in the 17th century, something shifted. The Dutch invented the bond market. Suddenly, debt wasn't just between 2 people anymore. It could be bought and sold, traded. A promise from the government to pay you back became an asset, something valuable. England copied the model, then France, then everyone else, and governments realized something extraordinary. You could fund wars, build empires, create infrastructure, all without raising taxes. You just borrowed the money and promised to pay it back later.
Later became a very flexible concept. By the 20th century, debt had evolved. It wasn't just governments borrowing anymore. It was corporations, banks, regular people. In 1950, total U.S. household debt was about 20% of GDP. By 2008, it was over 100%. People were borrowing to buy homes, cars, education, vacations. Things they couldn't afford became things they could finance. And the financial system loved it, because debt, unlike a product that gets used up, generates income forever. Every month, every year, interest payments flowing like a river. But here's where it gets strange. Debt stopped being just a way to buy things. It became the thing. Let me show you how. Imagine you're a bank. Someone comes in and borrows $300,000 for a house. You now have a contract. They'll pay you back $500,000 over 30 years, including interest. That's a profit of $200,000. Nice. But here's the trick. You don't have to wait 30 years to get paid. You can sell that mortgage to another bank, or to an investment fund, or to a pension fund. They pay you up front, and now they collect the monthly payments. You just turned 30 years of waiting into instant cash, and now you can lend that cash out again, and again, and again. This is how banks stopped being places that hold money and became factories that produce debt. But it gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. Someone realized you could bundle thousands of these mortgages together, slice them into pieces, and sell those pieces as investments, mortgage-backed securities. Each piece pays out a little bit every month as homeowners make their payments. Now you've turned debt into a product that pension funds, insurance companies, and foreign governments all want to buy. Because it's safe, right? People always pay their mortgages. Except when they don't. In the early 2000s, banks got greedy. They started giving mortgages to people who couldn't afford them. No income verification, no down payment, no problem. Why? Because they weren't keeping the loans. They were selling them, packaging them, trading them. As long as housing prices kept going up, no one cared. And Wall Street took it a step further. They created something called a CDO, collateralized debt obligation. Basically, they took the riskiest slices of mortgage-backed securities, bundled those together, and sold them as safe investments. Debt made from debt made from debt. The ratings agencies, whose job it was to evaluate risk, gave these things AAA ratings, the highest possible, safer than US Treasury bonds, they said. And then, housing prices stopped going up. The crash was fast. Homeowners defaulted, the mortgage-backed securities lost value, the CDOs collapsed, the banks that owned them faced bankruptcy. Lehman Brothers disappeared overnight. AIG, one of the largest insurers in the world, had to be bailed out with $182 billion in taxpayer money. The entire system froze, because modern finance doesn't run on cash, it runs on confidence. And when everyone realized that the assets they thought were safe were actually worthless, confidence evaporated. Governments had to step in. The US Federal Reserve dropped interest rates to zero and started buying debt, trillions of dollars worth. The European Central Bank did the same. So did Japan. So did China. They called it quantitative easing, a polite term for printing money and using it to buy the debt no one else wanted. And it worked, sort of. The financial system stabilized, banks recovered, stock markets hit record highs. But the debt didn't go away, it just moved. From private balance sheets to public ones, from banks to central banks, from corporations to central banks, and everyone kept borrowing. Here's the part that should bother you. In a normal economy, debt is supposed to be temporary. You borrow, you invest, you grow, you pay it back. But that's not how it works anymore. In the US, the national debt is now $36 trillion. That's $107,000 for every single person in the country. The government pays over $1 trillion a year just in interest, more than it spends on defense, more than on education, just interest. Japan's debt is 264% of its GDP. Italy's is 144%. China's corporate debt is over 160% of GDP. And interest rates are rising. For the first time in 15 years, borrowing is getting expensive again, which means the cost of servicing all that debt is going up fast. Governments can't pay it back. They can't even afford to stop borrowing, because if they do, the economy shrinks, businesses fail, unemployment spikes, everything breaks. So they keep borrowing, and they keep hoping that somehow, someday, growth will catch up. It won't. Because here's the thing about debt. It's future consumption pulled into the present. When you borrow money to buy a car, you're driving tomorrow's income today. That's fine if your income goes up, but if it doesn't, you're just stealing from your future self. And that's what the entire world is doing right now.
We've built an economy that requires constant growth just to service the debt we already have, not to pay it off, just to pay the interest. And when growth slows, when productivity stalls, when demographics shift and populations age and there are fewer workers to generate income, the math stops working. You can't grow forever, but the debt keeps compounding. Let me give you one more example, one that shows just how deep this goes. In 2019, something strange happened in the bond market. For the first time in history, there were $17 trillion worth of bonds trading at negative interest rates. Negative, meaning you paid someone to borrow your money. You gave them $100 and they promised to give you back $99. Why would anyone do that? Because there was so much money in the system and so few safe places to put it that losing 1% was better than risking 10%. Banks, pension funds, and insurance companies were so desperate for somewhere to park cash that they accepted losses just for the illusion of safety. This is what happens when debt becomes the product, when the entire financial system is built on promises that can never be fully kept, when the answer to too much debt is always more debt. So where does this end? Historically, when debt gets this big, there are only three ways out. 1. You grow your way out. The economy expands fast enough that the debt becomes manageable, unlikely given current demographics and productivity trends. 2. You inflate your way out. Prices rise, wages rise, the debt stays the same, but it's worth less in real terms. Possible, but painful. Everyone holding that debt loses value, savings get wiped out, social unrest follows. 3. You default. You just don't pay. Governments restructure, bondholders take losses, currencies collapse. Chaos. No one wants option 3, but when options 1 and 2 don't work, it's the only one left. And here's the final twist. The people who created this system, the bankers, the central bankers, the policymakers, they know all of this. They've known for years, but they can't stop, because stopping means triggering the crisis they've been trying to avoid. So they keep the machine running, keep interest rates low, keep printing money, keep borrowing, hoping that somehow, someone, someday figures out a way to unwind $300 trillion of debt without breaking everything. No one has. That vault in Manhattan I mentioned at the beginning, it's the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and it doesn't hold debt itself. It holds the records, the ledger, the proof that all these promises exist. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Those promises are only worth something if people believe they are. If confidence breaks, if trust disappears, the whole thing evaporates. Debt isn't real. It's a belief system, a collective agreement that tomorrow will be better than today, that growth will continue, that someone, somewhere will pay. And the moment we stop believing, that's when we find out what $300 trillion of nothing actually costs.